Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is episode 6 of the Maxwell Files. Ghislaine Maxwell's bail hearing has been moved to July 14th. Originally, when we last spoke yesterday, her bail hearing was supposed to be this Friday, but now it has been bumped to next week, and in the article I'm about to read, it will give us all of the details. This article is from the AP, and the author is Larry Neumeister. Headline: July 14th bail hearing date set for Epstein's friend Ghislaine Maxwell. Boy, that's a nice way to put it, huh? Friend? More like co-conspirator, partner in child abuse, shadow boss, fellow intelligence asset. Plenty of other words we could use here. Prosecutors say they will ask that Maxwell be kept incarcerated pending trial because she has money, the overseas connections, and the incentive to flee. She better be kept in prison, in jail. I've had people that I know caught up for way less than this, and they weren't given bail. So I don't want to hear anything about this lady getting bailed out, or she's going to be living the high life with an ankle bracelet hanging out on Scott Borgerson's couch eating caviar. I don't want to hear any of that nonsense. This vile, disgusting child predator needs to stay in jail forever. Jeffrey Epstein's ex-girlfriend, co-conspirator, fellow child abuser, shadow boss, intelligence asset, will appear remotely by video for a July 14th courthouse arraignment and bail hearing on charges she recruited girls for him to sexually abuse over 2 decades ago, a judge said Tuesday. So, the judge has made her decision, decided that this case will be heard on the 14th. So, what I would hope is that the prosecution comes loaded to bear on that day, both guns blazing, and ready to make sure that this vile, disgusting woman does not get out on bail. I don't want to hear about coronavirus. I don't want to hear about Ebola. I don't want to hear about staph infection. I don't want to hear about a lice outbreak. I don't want to hear about any of that shit. In jail, serving time for the rest of her life. The end. U.S. District Judge Allison J. Nathan set the date and order as she announced special arrangements to allow limited public access to the video feed of Ghislaine Maxwell facing charges for the first time in Manhattan federal court next week. Now, that's significant. It's very, very rare that we get public access to federal courts. But Judge Allison J. Nathan has decided that there will be limited public access to the video feed of Ghislaine Maxwell facing her charges. And there was a lot of people that were going crazy about the mugshot, but in 2016, a federal court ruled that there's not going to be too much access to mugshots for federal prisoners. So that would explain that. And now, Judge Nathan here is saying that there will be limited public access to the video feed. So I wonder what that limited public access will entail. Should be interesting moving forward to see who is given access to that feed. You would think that all of the survivors would be given access to that, and their lawyers, right? You would think that that for sure would happen. But I wonder, as far as the rest of the public, what sort of access is going to be available. The 58-year-old British socialite, child molester, child abuser, co-conspirator, fellow intelligence asset, was arrested last week at a $1 million estate she bought months ago in New Hampshire, where prosecutors say she had been hiding after Epstein killed himself, allegedly, in a Manhattan lockup last August. At the time, Epstein, 66, was facing sex trafficking charges. It still blows me away that this lady was able to buy $1 million pad in the midst of all of this. Imagine you're being charged with all this stuff, everyone's accusing you of this crazy nonsense, and you still have the ability to live your life to the degree of purchasing $1 million home? Meanwhile, you got these survivors who struggling each day just to get by. And this lady is living a life of opulence, huh? Has there ever been a better, more deserving arrest? I don't know, honestly, folks, because the day this lady was arrested, the world automatically became a better place. Maxwell was brought to New York City by the U.S. Marshals Service on Monday, when she was housed at a Brooklyn Federal Detention Center. Her lawyers did not return a message seeking comment, though they said in court papers that they spoke with her Monday evening. And I'm sure that they're in pretty much constant contact with her as much as possible, right? They're formulating their defense. We know that when Epstein was arrested, he had visits from lawyers. It was a revolving door of people coming in and out of there. It was like he was throwing a rave or something. So I wonder if Maxwell is going to get the same access to her lawyers, or if they're going to make sure that she doesn't have that same kind of access. Very interesting to see how all of this plays out. Prosecutors say they plan to ask that Maxwell be kept incarcerated pending a trial on the grounds that she has the money, the overseas connections, and the incentive to flee. They said she was also a citizen of the U.S., the United Kingdom, and France. And you most certainly don't want her to end up in France, right? There's no extradition treaty with France. She'll end up sliding away like Roman Polanski, probably. So it's crucial that she stays in America. It's crucial that she is not given bail. And it is most certainly crucial that she is not let out of the sight of federal authorities. Besides a telephone feed available to the public for the hearing, the judge said a video feed of the remote proceedings also will be set up in the courthouse jury assembly room. This is good stuff, folks, right? There was a lot of people that were clamoring for this, and now here you go. We're going to get our limited access. We're going to get some pictures, some video feed at the very least, probably some stills of Ghislaine Maxwell in front of that judge. So it's definitely a good thing. It'll definitely answer some questions, and hopefully it'll stop some of the side noise, because that's what that is. It's side noise. All of these crazy conspiracy theories that are based in nothing are just wild right now, too. Boy, I'll tell you. Like people trying to bring Dr. Fauci into this. I get it. People don't like the guy because of the coronavirus. There's definitely a segment of the population that don't like him. But why would you try and muddy the waters in something as important as this case? Why would people bring their dumb, stupid politics into this case? It's just amazing to me. And it's inevitably people who have not been following the case, who, read a couple of articles and all of a sudden they think they've cracked it. They have all the information and that's it. Let's run with it. Dr. Fauci didn't even have a brother, and that was the basis of that stupid rumor yesterday. It's just absolutely amazing to me. So I'm glad that there's going to be limited video footage here. I'm glad that people are going to be able to have a little bit of a glimpse inside the courtroom, and we could put that nonsense to rest, right? Because there's actually real concerns in this case, like her safety, like the people that she was involved with putting the thumb on her. Those are real concerns, okay? All the other background noise, I certainly don't have time for that. There's other forums for that, I guess, but I won't ever be delving into that nonsense here. Due to social distancing requirements, seating will be extremely limited, the judge wrote. All visitors to the courthouse will also have their temperatures checked, and face masks will be required, she added. So that's interesting. There's going to be limited seating as well. So I wonder just who exactly is going to get those seats. If it was up to me, obviously, it would be the survivors without a doubt. Any one of those survivors that wanted a seat should have it, right? And then I guess a few members of the press or something. I don't know how that's going to work out. It's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. In an indictment unsealed last week, prosecutors relied on statements by 3 women who alleged they were recruited by Maxwell and sexually abused by Epstein from 1994 through 1997. The court papers allege that the abuse began when one of them was as young as 14 and occurred at residences in Palm Beach, Florida, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and London. Maxwell has repeatedly denied wrongdoing and called some of the claims against her absolute rubbish. Oh, only some of the claims against her though, right? Not all of them. Some of the claims. This is absolute rubbish. Not all of it, but some of it. All of it. is the truth, okay, Ghislaine? We know the deal. Everybody here who's paying attention knows the deal. You're not a victim. You're not going to run with that cover that's being laid down for you by your friend in the media. Not going to happen. It's going to be challenged at every turn. You are a vile, bipedal serpent who was involved from the ground up with Jeffrey Epstein's criminal organization. You built it. Now you will own it. So we're going to do 2 articles today. Now, in this next article, it's an article from the Bloomberg, and it's talks about the facility that Ghislaine Maxwell has now moved into. The headline for this article is, Ghislaine Maxwell goes from luxury retreat to notorious jail. Author, Patricia Hurtado. Ghislaine Maxwell spent the last few months at a secluded 156-acre estate called Tucked Away, hidden in the woods of Bradford, New Hampshire. The type of luxury retreat she's grown accustomed to as Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend. All right, right off the bat, let's just stop them. Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend, co-conspirator, fellow child molester, shadow boss, and all-around scumbag. Let's call her what she is, folks, okay? Now, however, she's having to deal with accommodations that are much less glamorous. God, I love it. I love to hear the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell is living in absolute squalor right now. It really brings joy to my life. I shouldn't ever revel in other people's misery, but when it comes to people like her, I cannot help myself, folks. It brings me great joy. Her new digs are at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, a dusty lockup adjacent to the waterfront and expressway in Sunset Park. It's a place so notorious that a magistrate judge once said she was reluctant to send women there because of the unconscionable conditions. Absolutely fine with me as long as she's kept safe. As long as she's kept safe, I do not care what sort of shithole you put her in. In fact, after she stands trial, after she's convicted, I would like her in whatever the worst federal lockup is in the whole country. That's where she deserves to do her time. Maxwell, 58, has been in U.S. custody since her arrest on Thursday in New Hampshire on multiple charges, including conspiracy to entice underage girls to engage in illegal sex acts with Epstein from 1994 through 1997. Epstein hung himself in federal jail in Manhattan while awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges, allegedly. Maxwell agreed to appear before a judge in Manhattan by video conference from jail on July 14th, when she is likely to be formally charged and enter a plea. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, she's going to plead not guilty, right? But it's going to be interesting to see how her lawyers try and finagle a plea bargain, because you know that's coming. You know she's going to sign a proffer agreement, and you know she's going to turn state's witness. So the question becomes, what does she have to offer? What is she really bringing to the table? Since at least December, prosecutors say Maxwell has been hiding out in the sprawling 4-bedroom and 4-bath New Hampshire mansion, which boasts cathedral ceilings, a barn, and views of Mount Sunapee foothills from every room. The house was described by Sotheby's as an amazing retreat for the nature lover who also wants total privacy. Now that sounds like the perfect place for me to live, right? Man, the nature lover, privacy, view of the mountains. This bipedal serpent Ghislaine Maxwell, on the other hand, deserves nothing but a view from behind bars. But on Monday, U.S. Bureau of Prisons officials confirmed Maxwell was moved from a New Hampshire jail to the Metropolitan Detention Center, a federal jail that houses more than 1,600 male and female detainees. It's part of a compound of massive shipping warehouses built at the turn of the century and used during both world wars. So I've actually seen this facility before. I'm from New York originally, and I've seen this federal jail. It's an absolute dump. And where it's located, yeah, middle of nowhere, perfect place for her. I've never been inside of there, of course, but I have talked to a few people recently who did stints there. And from what they have to say, it is an absolute pigsty, a shit show, and the perfect place for this lady, in my opinion. No one wants to go to jail, but the conditions described at the MDC have been the subject of numerous complaints and scrutiny that rival the rat-infested federal lockup in Lower Manhattan where Epstein was held. And it's not quite as bad as the MCC from what I've been told, but it is right there, very close. In early 2019, hundreds of inmates at the MDC were locked shivering in their cells for at least a week after an electrical fire knocked out power in the building. The inmates spent some of the coldest days of the winter in darkness, largely without heat and hot water. Well, as shitty as that may sound, what about all of the homeless in our country that do that every single night? I know that we should have a facility that is, a humane place, but all right, so you were cold for 5 days? Put on a blanket, bro. Over the years, federal investigators have concluded the jail is among the worst in the U.S. Bureau of Prison system, finding that prisoners have been beaten, raped, or held in inhumane conditions. 2 inmates died recently. Well, that's kind of, the kind of stuff that's completely unacceptable. Now, I don't mind a jail or prison being uncomfortable for inmates, right? I don't want it to be a luxury retreat by any means, but everybody should be taken care of as far as their needs medically, physically. Nobody should ever be raped or even beaten if it's possible to stop, right? Stuff like that is going to occur in jail no matter where you go. Unfortunately, there's going to be people beaten. There's going to be sexual assaults. It's just par for the course in prison, especially in America. Now, in female prison, I don't know if it's as prevalent as in male prison, but that females get down too. Look, these are hardened criminals. And somebody like Ghislaine Maxwell most certainly is going to have a target on her back. After the coronavirus hit New York, Homer Venters, a former chief medical officer for the city's jails, visited the facility and concluded in a report that the facility was ill-equipped to deal with COVID-19 cases and failed to implement adequate infection control practices. Now, that's not very encouraging, right? The last thing we need is them to say, oh, she caught COVID and that's how she died. We know they're devious, we know they're smarmy, and we know they're scummy. So that is something that definitely concerns me. Venter said that he was concerned about the ongoing health and safety of the population at MDC and condemned the failure of the jail's officials to take simple steps to identify potentially sick patients and isolate them. Again, unacceptable. If people are sick, get them medical treatment. You're only making it worse for yourselves, the facility, and the nation as a whole if you let a COVID outbreak run rampant in the prison system. It's absolutely ridiculous. And again, it just goes to show the poor management of the officials running these shit shows. In a sworn statement filed April 28th, Darylyn Needham said she'd been incarcerated at the MDC since November 2019, along with 30 other women. They slept in bunk beds, and she said it was difficult to stay 6 feet apart. From April 20th to April 23rd, Needham said the women were on lockdown on our own bunk beds, not able to leave our bunks except to use the bathroom or shower. Boy, that sounds like a fun time, huh? That sounds like a real smashing time, and I'm sure Ghislaine Maxwell will have a blast if that occurs for her. I mean, she went from hopping on a plane or a helicopter and going wherever she wanted in the world to being locked down on her bunk with a bunch of other inmates. Yeah, sounds like a party I would not want to attend. The inmates were allowed to make phone calls one day, Needham said, but they hadn't been given gloves, hand sanitizer, or disinfectant wipes. After suffering from symptoms she thought could be COVID-19, including chills, fever, extreme fatigue, cough, and trouble breathing, she said the assistant warden told her she couldn't be tested. And again, certainly not a fan of convicts, right? But everyone should be treated humanely. And if convicts need COVID tests, they should be provided for them. Voicemail and email messages to the U.S. Bureau of Prisons on Monday seeking comment about the MDC weren't immediately returned. Cheryl Pollack, the federal magistrate in Brooklyn, has repeatedly voiced concerns about the MDC after reviewing a report by the National Association of Women Judges, who visited the facility and found that 161 female inmates were housed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in 2 large rooms that lacked windows, fresh air, or sunlight, and weren't allowed out to exercise. That all sounds fantastic for Ghislaine Maxwell. You kidding me? This might be the perfect place for her. Because she shouldn't be able to do any of that stuff, honestly. What she is accused of, what she was involved in, is the most heinous type of shit ever. Crimes against children, folks. Crimes against children. Some of these conditions wouldn't surprise me if it were dealing with a prison in Turkey or a third world country, Pollock said during one 2016 hearing. It's hard for me to believe it's going on in a federal prison. Well, I bet that's a bit of hyperbole. A prison in Turkey? Probably a little bit more squalid. The conditions are probably a little bit worse. Now, that's not saying things are great in the federal prison systems, because they're not. Even at decent facilities, where some of my loved ones have been, it's not a good place, okay? Not fun, nothing good comes of it, not enjoyable. And Ghislaine Maxwell has this to look forward to for the rest of her life. She's not going to some plush prison. She's not going to some lockup where things are going to be smooth and easy for her. She is going to federal prison for the rest of her life. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. Inside of the description box, you will find a link to the articles we discussed today, and you will also find a link to the GoFundMe if you would like to help the podcast out. All right, everybody, we'll be back in a little bit with some more.